Jananam Sukadham Maranam Karunam Milanam Maduram Smaranam Karunam Kalavashadiha Sakalam Karunam Samayadipate Akilam Karunam.
Welcome to the Future of Cities by Finnish Flow. Finnish Flow is coordinating the Finnish business community participation at Davos side events, the World Economic Forum side events. Finland has a lot to offer in the global context, and this is what we are shining a light on as Finnish Flow community with our amazing partners. This is our first year, and this is our great big opening for the Finnish Flow. Thank you very much for all coming here. And now when we're entering the flow, I would love to introduce our dear partner, Future of Cities, Tony Cho.
Thank you, Jana. Thank you, esteemed guests. Thank you, Deepak. Thank you, Helena. Thank you, Sadhguru. What a phenomenal experience today of transformation, aligned thinkers, working on global transition to a more regenerative future. At the Future of Cities, we are aiming to impact the lives of 1 billion people through innovations in the built environment. And today I'm hopeful and so grateful to my partners from Finnish Flow and to be part of this beautiful Finnish community of innovators and impact investors and technologists and visionaries. It's a true honor, and I can only imagine and dream together with you guys what the future will hold. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then we move into this very, very special wisdom panel. On this panel, our panelists will offer a mix of spiritual leadership and next generation indigenous wisdom. Helena Gallina is an environmental and human rights activist from Ecuador. Her activism includes exposing the conflict between her community and oil companies by carrying an empowering message among the youth in local schools in Ecuador and also globally. She's a youth ambassador of the Arctic Base Camp here in Davos, and they have facilitated her attendance to Davos. Dr. Deepak Chopra is the founder of Chopra Foundation, a non-profit entity for research on well-being and humanitarianism, and also founder of Chopra Global, a modern-day health company at the intersection of science and spirituality. Sadhguru is a yogi, mystic, and visionary who has founded the global Isha Foundation, launching large ecological initiatives. Sadhguru is currently also on a solo tour, driving a motorcycle from London to India, advocating the conscious planet movement to save the planet's soil. And tonight, we'll have a wonderful moderator, Vera Futoriansky, a CEO at Veritas Ventures, a woman in tech and VC, and a global speaker. That being said, over to you, Vera.
Thank you so much. It's my microphone. Thank you so much, Jana and Risto. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. I might be biased, of course, but I don't think there's a more interesting, more exciting, more mind-expanding panel in all of Davos 2022 than this one. So you definitely are in the right place. Welcome. Welcome also to everyone who's watching live. Is it this camera? So welcome, everyone. Let's dive right in. We'll only have 35 minutes, unfortunately, because Sadhguru will have to travel, so we'll go right in. We all know our planet is facing a lot of global challenges. This week, we all and the leaders gather here, we're also leaders, to find solutions for a more sustainable future. In this discussion, we'll cover 3 critical points. The soil crisis. As we all know, it's a big issue. So the economists covered today, we talk about food crisis. If we don't make any changes in the next 10 years, if I got it right, the next 200 years there will be a food crisis on the planet. Already 52% of agricultural soil is degraded. In 20 years, 40% less food is expected to be produced for the 9.3 billion people who will be living on our planet. Then we'll talk about the loss of biodiversity. Global loss of biodiversity is at its worst, as you know. And only 5% of indigenous people, there are only 5% of indigenous people, and they're the stewards of 80% of the world's remaining biodiversity. And Helena is here with us, who will talk about it. And of course, not many of us touch soil on a daily basis, or not many of us live in the jungle, in the forest. So we will also talk about anxiety and depression, and with that also about the shift we need, this conscious shift we need to understand the world better and how we can become more aware, conscious, meta-humans. And for that, we'll have Dr. Deepak Chopra inviting us into it. But we'll start with Sadhguru. It's such a pleasure to be sitting next to you. It's such an honor, really. You are now on a motorcycle from London to India. You've been to many places, you have this extraordinary campaign, you're meeting so many people, you also created a catchy song around it. We won't be singing it, but could you please share why you do it, and maybe most importantly also share a couple of tangible projects that have manifested along the way already?
Namaskaram. Good evening to…
Namaste.
Good evening to everyone. Is it okay? Well, the last 30 years I've been talking about soil at various levels, and we have launched projects. What I see is when I talk about the nature of soil and where it is going, everybody says, Sadhguru, this is great, fantastic, and they go to sleep. And as I speak to various agricultural ministries all over the world, everybody seems to know the problem, everybody knows the general direction of the solution. But when I observed this, I saw, after all, they're just waiting for an idiot to bell the cat. So here I am. We just started this journey at the age of 65. Riding 30,000 kilometers is an insane project, but we have completed 65 days and I'm still here. And I have done 467 events in the 65 days. And the social media metrics is showing that about 2.1 billion people have addressed soil in the last 65 days since we started the movement. The idea of this movement is to move at least 60% of the adult population on the planet to be concerned about soil, to say something about soil. Because in a democracy, the only currency is numbers. If the numbers are there, every government will move. At the same time, we have to understand this, that not in a single nation has ever 60% of the population has stood up and expressed their concern for some long-term well-being of their nation or their children or anything like this. They're asking for trinkets, they want 1% tax reduction and they're getting it. Nobody has ever asked. So this is what we are trying to do now. We want 60% of the population, adult population, to express concern for long-term well-beings. Why this is important is, we elect governments for 4 to 5 year terms. So you give them a 4-year mandate, and naturally they are focusing to fulfill that in 4 years, whatever they can do. Nobody wants to invest in something which will bear fruit after 15, 20 years, because whenever political leaders make an attempt to address long-term well-being of their nation, they lose the election next time. This has been the history of political life on this planet. Changing this is very important, that large number of people, over 60%, when they say that they're concerned about it, now governments feel comfortable to invest long-term. We have written to 730 political parties on the planet to include soil as a part of their manifestos, soil ecology as a part of their manifestos, because all the manifestos are only about tax cuts, this rebate, that rebate, never really long-term well-being. Why is soil such an important thing? This is the first time in the history of humanity we are addressing soil as soil extinction. The UN agencies are using the term soil extinction. Extinction means you always thought it's either a dinosaur or a dodo, but we are talking about soil extinction. And in 85% of the nations that I have spoken to, still agriculture ministries are addressing soil as an inert substance. It is very important that first of all we recognize soil as the largest living system, not just on this planet, in the known universe. A handful of soil has over 8 to 10 billion organisms, zillions of organisms and millions of species. The top soil scientists in the world are admitting that they know less than 1% of the species that exist in the soil. That's how complex the life is. This is the foundation of life for us. We are just a consequence of what is happening in the 15 to 18 inches of soil. If we have to bring this to context in some way, see, before photosynthesis started nearly 1 billion years ago, the oxygen content in our atmosphere was just 1%. Today it is 21%. It is because of this we have evolved this way, it is because of this we are breathing and alive right now. But in the last 1,000 years, we have removed 85% of the photosynthesis on the planet. What is the plan, really? Everybody is busy talking about carbon dioxide. I know it is an issue, I'm not saying it's not an issue, that is also a significant issue, but if we put fair measuring mechanisms, over 40% of the global warming and climate change is happening because of plowed lands. 54% of the Earth's land is plowed, seriously plowed. Another 18 to 20% is partially done. So nearly 71% of the land is under agriculture. This largest piece of geography where men and women are every day tending to it, we can't fix that. But everybody is talking about fixing the ocean, rainforest, sea comes from there, but most other people who are living in cities, they have never seen what's a rainforest. As far as the rainforest is concerned, if you just stay out of it, it'll be doing great. There is no need for anybody to have a project for that. Forest is something that's managed itself for millions of years, it can last for millions of more years. It doesn't need our help. It just needs some respite from us. But agricultural land is part of our nourishment process, it is part of our economic process, and this is where the real problem is, and that's not been addressed. This is why the Save Soil movement, as I said, 65 days we are on, another 30+ days are there. So we want to get this to 4 billion people so that every government on the planet responds to this. What is the way out? This will always be the thing. I can leave the simple policy we've done. One important thing we need to do with soil is, we need to separate soil from the rest of the issues that we are trying to handle. Right now I've looked at the European Common Agricultural Policy, it's too complex. By the time you implement this, there will be debates and debates for another 10 to 15 years' time before actual application comes, because this involves major industries, major lobbies in the world. It's not going to work like that. But if you talk about enhancing soil organic content, there is nobody on the planet who's against it. Not fertilizer industries, not pesticide industries, nobody is against it. Everybody is for it, because rich soil is the fundamental of rich life and good life for us. A healthy soil and healthy life are inextricably connected, there is no way about it. This is very simple, this does not need any great amount of technology, this doesn't need any great amount of financial outlays, it just needs that. Right now we are facing a wall. If we face the door and we are committed to going through the door, in the next 10 to 15 years we can make a significant turnaround. We have prepared 193 soil policy handbooks for 193 different nations, considering their latitudinal position, their soil types, their economic conditions and their agricultural traditions, because even if you have all the science, you cannot turn the agricultural traditions around overnight. It takes certain amount of time, you have to work with this. These things have been presented to the nations. I addressed COP15 just last week in Cote d'Ivoire, and the response has been great. 74 nations have signed up for Save Soil policy right now, and it is a way forward. We need all of you to enhance the message. Do not think this is my project, this is not my project, you don't have to talk about me. Talk about soil, make sure everybody talks about soil, because this is where our future is. There are many other issues in the world, I'm not saying they are not important, they are important, but first we have to be alive to handle other issues. If soil starts degenerating, right now 27,000 species per year are going extinct, organisms. It is a slide. It is expected in 25 to 40 years, we will get to a place where even if we want to regenerate the soil, we will not be able to do it because that will be the level of biodiversity loss. In my gut feeling, I don't have any science for this, in my gut feeling, this slide will not remain a slide. At some point, it will be a tumble. Before it goes into a tumble, we have to push the slide backwards, otherwise we will be a very regretful generation.
Thank you so much. And without soil, we won't have nutritious food. I think even now, 90% of food has lost its nutrition. And I would like, before all those 150 leaders leave this room, I'd like for them to have almost like a call to action. What can everyone do on an individual basis? Because many of us think our individual actions don't matter and something big has to be done. But it's as little as for the climate change, not leaving your flower on the floor in the hotel and not having needed, a clean towel every day. So maybe about the soil, we can also speak. What can an individual do on an individual basis? What can we do, each one of us, to save soil?
See, the moment you say that everybody want to roll up their sleeves and go and fix their kitchen garden, that's very cute, but that is not a solution. We've passed that stage. We've passed that stage where I do something wonderful, you do something wonderful, and there will be a solution. We have well passed that stage. We should have done this in 70s. You can't be talking about this in 2022, let's do something little and be happy. If you're doing this for your personal satisfaction, that's different. If you're doing it for a solution, right now, unless this is enshrined in the policy of the world, there will be no solution because you're addressing 71% of Earth's geography. This is not going to be fixed by me doing something cute in my house and you doing wonderful things. Even if you have 10,000 acres of land, if you fix it, it's still not a solution because there is no guarantee the next generation will do the same thing for you, unless it is made a law. When I say a law, see, in urban lands, there are laws. If you have 10,000 square feet of land, you cannot build a 10,000 square feet of building. They will allow you to build 6, 7, 8,000 square feet. But if you have 10,000 acres of land, you can plow every inch of it, turn it into a desert in 10, 15 years' time, nobody will ask you, why have you done it? Should this change or not?
Thank you. Helena, thank you so much for flying all the way from Ecuador. It's really a pleasure to have you here with the beautiful earrings.
I was just checking if she used those feathers to fly here. Beautiful though.
Thank you. We don't bring enough, we're here in Davos and it's historically has been pretty much people of one color making decisions. We don't bring enough indigenous people to the table. I think it's so important to have people at the table whose lives we decide upon, right? They're not at the table enough, so it's a really big pleasure to have you here. I think it's really important also for the audience to know that…
For the little girl, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Helena
did use fossil fuels to fly.
Well, but we need to hear her voice.
Just kidding.
So yeah, she's representing indigenous women. I'd like for you to speak about indigenous women in a second, about the role you play. I think important for everyone to know, and Helena will speak more about it, that only one of few groups were able to protect the forest. The indigenous people are one of the few groups that can protect it. And Helena's tribe, if that's correct, took the Ecuadorian government to court in 2011 and won that battle. Let that sink in, to win the battle.
To international court.
It's a first of its kind. Could you please tell us a little bit more about it and especially what role the indigenous women play in it?
Yeah, of course. Hi everyone, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to share this panel with you. I come from a community called Sarayaku in the Ecuadorian rainforest. I grew up there and I also partly grew up in Finland. But when the year I was born, which is in 2002, an oil company entered my community without my people's consent. And there was this immediate response to this, which was, no, we don't want you here. We had already seen the devastating impacts that the oil industry would have in the Amazon rainforest, what it would do to our health, what it would do to our water. We have really horrible examples of what the oil industry's activities lead to in the Amazon. So we had this very clear idea of we don't want the oil industry here. And this is 20 years ago when no one knew what the Amazon rainforest was, basically. There was no media covering this. There were no international NGOs, governments, nothing working in the Amazon or to protect the Amazon. So we were a community of 1,000 people facing two of the biggest powers of my country, which is the government and the oil company. My people knocked on every door they could find, which was taking them to a small court in the region. When that didn't work, they didn't accept the case. They took it to the national court. They did not accept the case. And 10 years later, in 2012, we were able to take the Ecuadorian state to international court for violating our human rights and for not respecting our rights to our territory. This was the first one of its kind in not just the Amazon, not just in Ecuador, but in Latin America. So this changed the entire future of indigenous people's rights and our right to our territory across Latin America, not just in my country. So
and the indigenous women.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, that is those 10 years. I was really, really young when all of this was happening. I come from a family who's been very involved in this process. My aunt, my mother, my uncles, they've all been leaders in my community. So I was always kind of running around. My mom was a leader at the time. I was someone who would never leave my mom's side, so I was attending all her meetings from the age of 4 until now, whenever I can. And, you know, yeah, we had a really strong leadership from the women in the community. And the women were actually the first ones to say no when the proposal of the oil companies came. They were the first one to say, no, we don't want this for our children. We don't want our children bathing in oil. That's what they said. So it's really important to understand this relationship that women have, not only to land, but the entire rainforest, the entire ecosystem. And as you were saying before, we indigenous people, we only make up 5% of the world's population, but we have 80% of the world's biodiversity in our territories. But inside of this, this statistic, these numbers, those territories are taken care mostly by women. So it's really, really important when we're talking about these things in these spaces that we actually have a gender lens, because climate change impacts women more in so many ways. And the violence that comes from the oil companies and the state is always going to affect women more. But women are also the ones that are the custodians of these lands. And my sister always says this. She says, we have an experience as indigenous people when we're facing extractivism, when we're facing racism, but indigenous women have one specific experience of all of this. And that is something that is really important to be aware of. Yeah.
Thank you. We're protecting our Mother Earth. Thank you.
And going back to this landmark, victory that we had 10 years ago now, we've been able to see many, many more victories in the Amazon to protect the Amazon rainforest, because it created this really important legal precedent. And now, just a year ago, 2 years ago, we had a really important victory in the Ecuadorian Amazon, where thousands of hectares of land were protected. And this is because this really, really small community, which I come from, took the state to court and won. So yeah, it's really important.
Thank you so much. I'm just being told that Sadhguru has to leave in 5 minutes already. Dr. Chopra, do you mind if we let Sadhguru speak for 5 minutes, a few minutes, and then…
Absolutely. I don't have to say anything.
No, we have so many questions. You have to. The whole meta-human, everybody wants to know about it. But yes, then…
Because this is about cities, I thought I shouldn't go without saying anything about it. This happened to me, I was to speak in the San Francisco Union Club, San Francisco Club for a group of business people. I was driving about an hour, we were driving an electric car, but I saw both sides of the road were packed with cars. So this person who's a large-scale business there, I asked, what is the problem? That people who live here, work there, those who live there, work here, what is this problem we have? You live in one place, work in the opposite direction, those who live there, work in the opposite direction. Why can't we at least rejig this a little bit? So as a part of that, I came up with a concept of one building city. That today these proposals are still floating around with the South Indian governments. It should become a reality in the next few years. That is outside the city, go 30, 40, 50 kilometers away from the city, 50-acre land, only 1 acre you build, you can build 50 to 100 floors if you want. These remaining 49 acres will be completely eco-friendly, enough forest, enough agriculture if you wish to do. You can grow enough fruits and vegetables that you need for this community. Up to 10,000 people can live in the city. We capped the city as 10,000 is a limit for a city, don't have to be 10 million. It's such a mess, these 10 million cities. 10,000. The major cities that we have could be slowly converted into really cultural attractions where people can come once in a week, in the weekend or whatever. Whole week you don't have to start your car, completely no wastage going out. We have designed cities like this. I feel this should be the future because if you do not urbanize rural areas, the urban centers are becoming more and more chaotic and senseless, and the amount of power and the amount of requirement that is there, the ecological footprint of an urban center is too heavy. This will not happen unless investment shift. Right now the numbers, somebody was telling me here that 72% of the world's investment is in 31 cities on the planet. With this, how do you expect people to be farming in another 30 years? We did a survey in India, out of 63% of Indian population which is in farming right now, not even 2% of the farmers want their children to become farmers. This is where food security problem is. Unless we create urbanized villages, unless we make it attractive for people to live on the land, most people, as they get qualified, they will all pile up into the cities. I think this is something we must avoid. Those of you who are looking at the future cities must definitely address this issue. I'm extremely sorry, I'm never known to do this, leaving halfway through the meeting. This is not me, but I have tomorrow 11 o'clock, I have a big event in Muscat. I need to be there and I have to fly now. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you. I'll just move closer to you and we'll continue. How much time do we have?
Now we can go.
Oh, well now we go on all night. So, Dr. Chopra, now we come finally to you, last but not least, and probably what everyone is waiting for. So we heard Sadhguru and Helena talk about soil and nature so much. How can we create this spiritual conscious shift in humanity, especially in regards to climate change?
So first of all, the soil movement is important. 80% or more, actually 99% or more of your genetic information is the planetary microbiome. If you go take 1 teaspoon of soil under the Amazon, you'll find more genetic biodiversity than the entire surface of the planet. So soil is important to preserve the soil. And secondly, the rights of indigenous people to their lands, legal rights, equally important. They are the preservers of the ecosystem that is so vital to our survival. And before I say anything more, I want to acknowledge one person here, BRK. I heard his talk. So we all have our own views, but please check out his website. You have a website. And it's the most holistic, most expansive approach I've heard to climate change. And it's practical, it's doable, and it involves technology. So please do not think that technology is an enemy. Technology can be diabolical, as it is right now with eco-destruction and cyber warfare and terrorism and all kinds of ridiculous things, but technology can actually save us from our collective suicide. We are sleepwalking ourselves to extinction. So thank you, BRK, very much. It's the best talk I ever heard on this.
Oh, wow.
Now, coming to what is called a spiritual shift, the problem is with our language. You know, language by definition, most languages are dualistic. So we say me and the environment. And the environment is not a good word. The biosphere outside you and the biosphere that you call your body is the same biosphere. And so this air is your breath. The trees are your lungs. If they didn't breathe, you wouldn't breathe. And if you didn't breathe, the trees wouldn't breathe. The oceans and waters are our circulation. The earth is recycling as our body. And the atoms, the carbon, hydrogen, oxygen in your body was forged in the crucible of burning stars. So you owe the entire, in fact, 50% of the atoms in your body are not even from the Milky Way galaxy. They are sucked into our galaxy by a phenomenon called gravitational wind. So why do we call that the environment? You have a personal body, you have a universal body, they're equally yours. And that's the spiritual shift we need to make. You know, in Sanskrit, the word for consciousness is Brahman. And the word for the universe is Brahmand. So consciousness projects itself as what we call the physical universe. Now our science, our current science, notwithstanding its amazing developments, is based on a principle which in the philosophy of science is called naive realism. Einstein was a brilliant scientist of our times, but he was a naive realist, which means he thought that there was an objective universe independent of an observer. Now, if there is such a universe, it's not available to you and me. It doesn't exist. The only universe that you have available to you is your own consciousness. And it's a species-specific experience. It's not the same thing, the universe of an insect with 100 eyes or a bat that moves through the echo of ultrasound. So what we call the physical universe is a human construct for perceptual activities which are modified modes or modalities of consciousness. Just like your mental activity is a cognitive modified mode of consciousness. So Brahman and Brahman go together, and Sanskrit has that language. If you want to really have an effect on the movement, I would say look at everything, not just one thing. Look at what BRK is talking about, seriously. And then you need that shift inside you, so you don't think that's me and that's that. That is you as much. You put a plant in a vacuum, it dies. You put a rabbit in a vacuum, it dies. You put them both together, they thrive. So that's the spiritual shift we need, but it needs what social scientists call emergence, maximum diversity, shared vision, emotional and spiritual bonding, and complementing the strengths of everyone, technologists, scientists, people working in the VR field, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, people are putting it all together in the way BRK is doing, and actually having that internal shift in yourself. So you respect your body, both your personal body and your universal body. That shift is necessary for us to actually make a movement that's effective on the emotional level. Everybody knows what the technologies are, but we're not doing much about it.
Thank you so much. Well, Bjarke, you definitely have a fan.
Absolutely.
Bjarke will talk later as well, and you should take this recording for your website. If I were you, I would have it on my website. Exactly.
I don't flatter people.
I know, this is a big
I do not flatter
statement.
people. This is authentic, what I'm saying. You don't need just this or just this. You need all of it.
I wish, I mean, I'm being looked at already like this, that we really need to finish. And I wanted to speak so much more about meta-human. I also been reflecting on consciousness in the metaverse is something we would have, jumped into as well. But unfortunately, we have to end it here. So Helena, Dr. Chopra, and Sadhguru, I'm sure he's still present with us. But I'm being told by the lady in white that we have to end.
No, I think you can
you have to...
keep going.
Okay, we'll continue. Okay. All right. Then I'm only going to listen. Then only I'm focusing on what Risto will decide. Okay. Then, Dr. Chopra, we have the time to talk about how to become the augmented, superhuman, meta-human, how you call it. How can we bring that consciousness into...
Meta-human is a word that was first used in the English language, or Abraham Maslow. If you look at his notes, he was talking about going beyond self-actualization to self-transcendence. So meta means beyond, and human ordinarily refers to the conditioned human mind. As soon as you're born, you're brought into certain constructs. This is your name, this is your nationality, this is your religion, and that's the world. And so I don't think being human in the sense we know human, the divided, conditioned mind, can never solve anything. You have to wake up to meta-human, which is the awakened being, and not the awakened mind, because there's no such thing as an awakened mind. The mind, to begin with, is conditioned. Centuries of conditioning, millennia of conditioning, economic conditioning, religious conditioning, tribal conditioning, political conditioning, ancestral conditioning. You can't solve these problems through the conditioned mind. The awareness of the mind is not the mind. And awareness is inherently free, creative, thrives in uncertainty, and is the source of attention and intention. So the metaverse that I'm talking about is not what's his name?
Mark Zuckerberg.
Mark Zuckerberg is talking about. Okay? This is the metaverse of awakened beings who actually have to get rid of their ego identities and recognize that their selfie is not their self right now. We have sacrificed ourselves for our selfies. And so we need to go back to the self. I can try something out to you right now. Are you listening to me right now? Yes. Now just be aware of that which is listening. Try it right now. That still presence is not your mind. It's the awareness of the mind. That's what creativity is. You asked about uncertainty. Uncertainty is creativity, otherwise you're a biological robot and an algorithm, which is useful solving problems, but it will never be creative.
Yeah. Creativity thrives on uncertainty. Yes. Helena, I'd like to bring you back into the conversation. How much time do we have now, for real? 10 minutes. Okay. Just shifting gears a little bit, how could we increase the dialogue to bring back nature and indigenous? How could we increase the dialogue between Western people and indigenous people? Have you seen some good examples of that? And what do you wish for we could do more? And I know you said you also had a call to action to share with us. You wanted to talk about a certain initiative for us to look into, if you like.
Sure. Well, I think there is this... You were touching on that earlier. There is this idea of seeing nature as something that is opposite to us, rather than something that we belong to, that we are part of. If we have a bowl of something and we put human in there, that's nature. We fit perfectly in, you know. It's not something that that's unnatural. We are a part of nature. We are natural. And I think that is something that a lot of people, a lot of societies have been deprived of. If there is something that we have a right to, it is to where we belong, right? To nature and to the forest, to the waters. But there is unfortunately this disconnection right now, and I think it's super relevant that we're talking about this at the future of cities, because when we think about a city, for me, I see a concrete jungle. I don't see a real jungle. I don't see my home. I see, not much green in it. And unfortunately, for many people, the access to nature has become something that does not exist. They don't have access, and it has become a privilege. I always say I'm one of the most privileged people on this planet because I live in the middle of the rainforest. And because I know so many people do not have that access and cannot reach it, cannot have that access. And you know, how do we kind of find back the connection to nature if we're not even able to be in nature? That is a huge issue today. And I was talking to you before, and you said we want to bring nature into the cities, right? That's the only way to do it. We need to bring back nature, but we also need to make sure that the nature that we already have is preserved. What Sadhguru said earlier, the forest will be there. We just don't need to touch it. We just need to get out of there and leave it alone. But we can have this coexistence with forests. I live in the middle of the rainforest, and we can have this. We can create this balance of living in nature and being in nature, living of nature too. And that is where indigenous knowledge comes in, of how do we create this balance, because that is what's lacking today. And that is also what is, in a way, making us spiritually sick, you know, because we have been deprived of this fundamental thing, fundamental piece of our lives and of our existence as human. In my community, we have something that's called kausaksacha. Kausaksacha in my language means the living forest. We see everything in the forest as living. So the trees are living, the plants, the flowers, everything. But we also see the lagoons, the mountains, the rivers. They are also alive. They are equal to us, and that is the balance that we need. That is the shift in mindset that we need, where we stop seeing nature, where we stop seeing mountains and rivers and lagoons as something that is opposite to us, but something that we are equal to. Living forest also means that we have these beings that we can feel, that we cannot see, but that we can feel that they are there. And this is very closely tied to, you know, our identity in the rainforest and why we protect it, why it's so important for us to protect it. But what is it that has made my community put everything on the line, put their own bodies on the line to protect the rainforest? It is because we have this relationship with what I'm calling the living forest, what is translated to English as living forest. And if we don't have that shift a shift in our mindset, we're not going to be able to reach that balance that we're seeking for today. So there is this, for example, when we're talking. I talk to scientists, and they're like, no, that doesn't exist. You know, oh, so okay, can we do like a study on all these beings you're talking about? You know, there is definitely this push back from I guess, other types of sciences. I always say our indigenous knowledge is also science. But the balance that we're seeking is not possible without including that type of knowledge and that type of science as well.
Yeah, very important. We're so lucky to have you here, and you so gracefully navigate between the indigenous world and the Western world.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for sharing that. And I really hope your voice will be heard further, because we need more voices like yours at the table to make important decisions. So thank you so much once again. I know we only have 3 minutes left. Yeah. Would you like to comment on that? How could we bring, for those of us who are practitioners, and I suppose there are several practitioners in the room already who go and meditate, go into nature, how can we bring this with us into our daily life in the city, which is not as green yet?
Well, listening to her made me feel actually nostalgic about my childhood, where in India we still had forest reserves, and some of them still exist, where you could go and see tigers and giraffes and all of that. But when she spoke about the concrete jungle, that's what we have. We have an exoskeleton without any flesh, bones, or circulation or gut. So part of the project of rewilding cities would be that, and bringing the forest to the city. And certainly that's a great movement that should be supported. Ultimately, I think we all belong to an ecosystem that wants change, and no one can do it by themselves. So once again, maximum diversity. Include in your conversation scientists, philosophers, technologists, people in the world of artificial intelligence, but also include poets and songwriters and entertainers and academic institutions, and most importantly, the indigenous people.
I think it's important to remember that we are the ancestors of our future. So the choices we make today will impact many generations to come. So let's all make good choices. Thank you so much, Dr. Chopra, Helena, Sadhguru, namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You were great.